Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So I have the pleasure of providing an overview as to why we went down the path of developing up this decarbonisation pathway. And interestingly, it is an industry-wide pathway, so unique in the fact that we were looking at it on behalf of our dairy processing sector. So I'll just do a bit of an overview of the project, and then I'll pass over to DETA, who will take you through some more details around the methods, what some of our findings are, and then I'll come back and talk about next steps. So just quickly, who is the Australian Dairy Products Federation? So we are the peak policy and advocacy body that represents the dairy manufacturing sector. So these are the dairy processors, the traders, the brokers, the marketers of our great Australian dairy products. And collectively, we support more than 88,000 jobs, a large part which is in regional Australia, and we contribute more than 19.6 billion to the economy each year. Importantly, what I wanted to share is that we represent about 90% of the milk that's processed around the country. And that's really important when you're an advocacy body to make sure that you do take carriage of that collective voice, and hence why this project was so important. Next slide, please. Okay, so why did we go down this decarbonisation path? So clearly energy is one of the most significant costs for a dairy processing business. So it sits up there within their top three. But you overlay that with the fact, as you said, you've got governments, you've got markets, you've got customers, consumers that are expecting this transition to lower emission manufacturing. And I've just listed here a raft of government targets, and these are Australian government targets that are in play, sort of driving that renewable basis for us. From a processing perspective, we overlay the current operating environment with these sustainability credentials, and the end goal is to how do we do that transition, but we need that reliable access to energy whilst obviously also maintaining our costs and our cost competitiveness. So the question that we asked on behalf of our members is, how can we make this transition affordable? How do we make sure that it's practical? And obviously we need that reliable energy source. And us as an industry then is, what do we need to do that? So next slide, please. So obviously decarbonisation, you all know, is all around how do we reduce our greenhouse gas emission. Two sort of areas that we look at is, one is how do we actually improve our energy efficiency through our processes, and then obviously the second is how do we really adopt some of those low emission technologies. So the path that we went down, so the whole premise of this decarbonisation pathway, was we needed to provide an evidence base. We wanted to look at all of the assets that we have, understand which of those were getting close to end of life, and then obviously support with that transition. But then we wanted to overlay that with what technology is currently available. So whether it's here, whether it's globally, what are the barriers to actually implementing that technology, and overlay that obviously then with opportunities. We wanted to wrap all of that then into what are our policy priorities. So we take all of that information around that asset inventory assessment, we look at our technologies, we look at the barriers, we look at the opportunities. How do we then craft that into what our priorities are, both from an individual member perspective, but then what we can take carriage of from an advocacy perspective on a whole of processing perspective. And that's what we will share with you now. Next slide. Before I do that, obviously our project partners are DETA Consulting, and this was also made possible with funding from the Australian Industry Renewable Heat Accelerator. So I'll pass over to you now, Bryce.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So just a few acknowledgements. It's been really, really great to work with Janine and the ADPF. It's been really awesome collaborating on this project. Obviously, Australian Industry Renewable Heat Accelerator provided some funding, so that's really helped progress this work. And the members of the ADPF have engaged really well, and their feedback, their data, their insights have really helped shape the study's findings. So really want to acknowledge all of them as well. And we're going to hear from Warren later on some of his stuff. So Janine's done a really good job at articulating the why. And if we talk about how we've actually gone about this work, I've tried to frame it up in sort of a few key questions. And question one was, how does the industry use energy at the moment? And we really wanted to answer that with real data, real feedback from members, and that's going to really help I guess, take these findings and share them with stakeholders. We also wanted to talk about how could the industry improve its energy use, and I guess it's been really great to hear from Windsor Engineering, but also what technologies are out there, what's in place, and how does the industry improve its energy usage. Thinking about that, wanted to posit what does the future look like, and also what's stopping that future being realised, and how do we then address those barriers and help realise that future. So that was the methodology, and starting with the asset inventory. No real surprises. Like fossil fuels contribute the majority of energy for sites, and it's about a 70-30 split between fossil fuels and electricity. But because of Australia's grid, the emissions contribution is actually 60-40 the other way, where electricity emissions actually contribute the majority of emissions currently. And there's some nuance around how we think about that in terms of a roadmap and pathway for the industry. I guess, no surprises around where the dairy sites are. The majority of sites are in Victoria, so that's going to be a focus for the industry. But it was really actually interesting to see that there's a real broad spread of asset ages and asset capacities. And I think what that means is there's no large group of assets coming to end of life. It is an ongoing thing, and it means that support and thinking about how to decarb is an ongoing challenge. And I think it's also worth highlighting that some of the ages of assets are getting up there, and I think that sort of speaks to some of the challenges we'll talk about down the track, where these businesses are really trying to remain cost competitive, make the most of their assets, and some of those capital constraints. So thinking about how the industry could improve its energy usage, again, we wanted to really engage with members and understand what makes projects attractive for them. So we got the input on developing some evaluation criteria and selecting a technology and opportunities shortlist. And what we sort of came up with was top 20 technologies. And broadly speaking, they're split into the demand side of things. So, that's all about optimizing existing assets, reducing energy, improving energy efficiency. But then the second part of it is the supply side, or how do we go about generating heat, and how do we go about generating electricity for the site. So I think, this just kind of reinforces a little bit of what Kyle was highlighting. Like, technology is there, and, the technology and opportunities are being implemented. Maybe not so much in Australia, but definitely internationally and across New Zealand, they exist and they're happening. So, there is no single silver bullet, but there are real options out there. As part of the study, we also pulled together some one-pagers, and the idea behind that was providing a really good resource for ADPF members and the industry to refer to in the future. So that's also a part of the report. Now, before we get into the pathway and what that future could look like, it is worth just highlighting some of the barriers that we got direct feedback from members on. And for those, I guess, in the industry and working across industries, we have seen and heard all of these before. And given that all of this has come direct from industry and direct from members, and members of different sizes, like, this should really add to some of that feedback, which I think is starting to really turn into a cacophony of voices saying there are some real challenges around achieving decarb. So there are some specific nuances for the dairy industry, but just highlighting them, electrical capacity, both on-site and networks, those financial barriers, the CapEx challenges, but then also the OpEx challenges. In New Zealand, Kyle highlighted that there is actually some benefit sometimes for using electricity. There is a cost competitive aspect there. in Australia, that is not necessarily always the case. So there's a challenge around that. And then also talking about the dairy industry, it has an annual cycle. It's very focused on being cost competitive, and that means resources are not necessarily always there to chase the funding, which you blink and you miss it, or really develop out how to implement some of these initiatives which are outside of business BAU in a highly regulated and high hygiene processing environment. So those are the barriers. Talking about some specific targets and a pathway, the ADPF and the Australian Dairy Sustainability Framework, they have a target for dairy processing in 2030 to hit a certain processing intensity. And at the moment, the industry has made really good progress. But there is a gap there, and that gap is about 200,000 tonnes annually, give or take, of carbon emissions. And I'll run through the graph in a little bit more detail in a second, but highlighting again that a majority of emissions come from the grid electricity at the moment, and there are some different projections out there around how Australia's grid might decarbonise. That's definitely going to play a role in the industry decarbing and hitting its targets. But I think there are some different scenarios around that, and the green line on this graph is kind of the current projection, or at least the 2025 projection from DQ. But I think what we see is that projections, and this is kind of what these two graphs are showing, projections have consistently not been realised. And then also, even if you do electrify, or I guess go to biomass, but even if you do electrify, the spark gap between the emissions intensity of burning natural gas on site versus the grid means that electrifying is not an answer in of itself. So I guess thinking about some different scenarios, we mapped out some different, pathways, and looking at the teal line now, we think that there's about a 15-tonne CO2 per million litres of milk processed gap that the industry will need to try and solve to hit its 2030 target. So how do we close that? Well, it's not rocket science. This is all been done and tried before, but we think that optimizing existing assets on site and using some of those technologies and opportunities identified in the technology scan can contribute about 30% of that abatement. And then also thinking about there are a large group of assets which are possibly nearing end of life. If we can electrify these or move them to biomass, and back with the right supply agreements, that can deliver 60% of that abatement. But the barriers really do show that this is not going to happen by itself, and there needs to be some real support and capability built up around that. And then it would be remiss to not also talk about renewable generation, and say batteries and solar is a big topic in Australia. And I think there's going to be more developments and support probably in the space, which might mean that it is a useful means to reduce emissions whilst you perhaps prepare, or the industry prepares, different initiatives, because that's another point that was really hit home in the feedback, is that dairy processing is complex. There's lots of interdependencies, and you cannot think about projects individually. You need to really think about projects on a site level and really dig into what the site roadmap looks like. And so jumping back to, I guess, a high level, we really see that there are three phases of decarbonisation for the industry. And that first phase, and Kyle even said it before, this is not a 1 or 2 year journey, it is a long-term journey. So, that first phase is about building a really, really good foundation for future initiatives and business decision making, and optimizing the roadmap, and data collection, metering, all that stuff is really, really important. And then it's about picking that low-hanging fruit, getting those quick wins banked, and starting to build business capability, capacity, and also confidence that the business can deliver these initiatives before you then go and deliver those real strategic initiatives. So that's from a high level. That's kind of how we see things playing out. And then the last piece of work that we sort of did as part of the study is we had a look at, because there is policy and funding in Australia, we had a look at what's been out there or what's out there at the moment, and had a look at it from a dairy processing perspective. So we think that there is funding out there, but quite often it is focused on an individual technology or individual process. And again, highlighting that lots of these processing sites, they're complicated, lots of systems are tied in together, and there's lots of interdependencies. And so we think that support for a site roadmap, all of site study, is probably more beneficial for a dairy site than just an individual technology focus. We talked about resources, so supporting the businesses to go and access those resources, and then network or supply side mapping and pathways. We think there's a really important piece of work to do there, and that's both looking at maybe biomass supply and where it exists, or maybe where the network supply exists. And we think that's some initial work to happen right away. And then also it's probably just, again, another general ask is like, for businesses to make decisions around some of these projects, they really need to see some certainty in the energy space and also the emissions space. And so that's framed up our actions and advocacy points. And there's a lot of detail in the report, which we're really looking forward to sharing. But that's a very brief overview of things. So thanks for your time. And I think Janine, over to you.
Great. Just one slide to come back to. So this is just next steps. So we're looking to finalise the report over the next week. So as Bryce said, it's got some great practical information, technical insights, but most importantly, it needs to benefit both members as well as us in terms of advancing advocacy asks. So next steps then are just around prioritising all of the information that's in here and how we wrap that up into a package that we take to government, and then importantly, how we support members from an implementation perspective. That's it. Thank you.
Let me know you can hear me okay?
Definitely. Thank you.
Great.